I want to introduce Kris Barney. Kris, I was trying to figure out where we met each other. I know that we met at National Speakers Association, but it seems to me like we met before that. I want to, Kris has been an absolute dear friend of mine. When my world blew up, I think it's been now 7 years ago. Both my children moved back east and my mother passed away. And I was always used to calling my mom. In fact, when we left the hospital, and it was before she had passed, but I went to call her. So every time I get in the car, I would always call my mom and say hi and see what she was up to and that. And so Kris said, hey, whenever you get in the car, just feel free to give me a call. And so I would call Kris and she would talk, and a lot of times, she would just talk about how her day was going and that, and I really didn't have to say anything. And then when I get to my destination, and it was like, okay, I'm okay. And so she was really an absolute lifesaver. And so Kris, you kind of moved into, not only was she doing training and coaching, and she's an author and just incredible, and brought her husband into the business with, and helping. So they work as a team, but she was really, really helping with women, and incredible story. And I'd love for you to share your story as well. And then you've moved also now into corporate trainings as well, and is very, very successful in corporate trainings, successful in running businesses. And so first of all, I would love for you just to share who is Kris Barney, and your extraordinary, there's a lot of things that Kris will never tell about herself, but the incredible work that she does for charity and different things. And so share a little bit about you, Kris.
Well, I really hadn't planned on doing any of that, because when I was on yesterday, that wasn't the thing you were doing. But you and I met, I believe, at a Salt Lake Circles. It was still at the Zions building when I first met you, and you are a phenomenal networker. And I just remembered feeling like out of place. Why was I at this thing? And one of the people that put that on is Joel Smith, and I went to high school with him, and we were friends, but we weren't really great friends in high school. And so it was kind of funny that I felt kind of awkward. He had told me to come, and I met you, and it was just, I felt comfortable all at once. I was just like, okay, I found a person that I can, relate with. And then we both showed up at National Speakers Association shortly after that. And just, we've been dear friends for years. But some of the history of me is I've been an entrepreneur for 35 years or more. When we first got married, we were self-employed, and ever since then, I've had some kind of a business going. Most of the time during the years that my kids were growing up, I chose to be at home. So I had an early education degree where I could run a daycare center, or a great big, I was certified to run the biggest you could in our state. And I chose to do that from home, and other, I call them hobbies, or, the side gig that you got going on. So I had a bunch of those things going on, even though my husband could provide for our family. It was always that we wanted extras. And so our extra business was so we could have motorhomes and four-wheelers and boats and toys, because without that, we would have lived a nice lifestyle, but not what we wanted to. And 25 years ago, we went through the first experience with cancer. And that's one of the stories she's talking about, is to share that story. And I share that a lot, and I'm not going to share the whole thing, but it was my oldest child was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he was 9 years old. And he was the oldest of 4 children. So I had just adopted a baby who was 11 months old. And I had these 3 boys in under 4 years. So they were 9, 7, 5, and an 11-month-old baby when we were diagnosed with a brain tumor. And over that next 11 months, we spent 180 nights in the hospital. And that's basically like being at the hospital almost every single day of the year. And it was just this horrific trial. And he survived, he did well, but it was cancerous, and we did chemo and radiation and surgery, and he lost the use of his legs. And I mean, so there was just so much going on, and he was one of 3 head things that year. So we had his, then my daughter's skull had to be redone. Her skull did not have the sutures for your skull to expand and grow. So we had to take her skull off and put it back on. And then when they both were released from the hospital, we went on vacation with our 4-wheeler club thinking, okay, we're going to celebrate. And the first ride, my husband was in a horrific ATV accident and was our 3rd head injury. We ended up in the hospital in Idaho from St. Anthony Sand Dunes. So, I mean, we just had this whole thing going on. And at this point, we owed $80,000 to doctors for our portion. I mean, we'd hit the $1 million mark that year with medical, and to come up with 80 grand after we'd been paying thousands to keep my son alive was just this horrific thing. And during that whole year, it was just so hard on my son that we were headed to the hospital a couple months in, and I could just tell it was just taking everything out of him. And so I just said, this time when we go to the hospital, we're going to do this different. We're going to go straight to the gift shop. We're going to buy a Mylar balloon, and we're going to go room to room visiting the kids, and until we find the right person for that balloon. And he was almost 10. He was just like, that's dumb, that's lame, I don't want to do it. And I just said, well, you don't have to want to, but we're going to. And we got there, we went straight to the gift shop, and to, I guess, show me that he was all that, right? A boy almost 10, he picked a pink Mylar balloon, and I just kind of laughed at him. I'm like, it's pink. Like, are we visiting girls or what? Like, you're 10. and it was just kind of funny because this pink congratulations balloon to me was like, what are you thinking? One second, I'm gonna take a drink. And how many times do you really hand out a congratulations balloon at Children's Hospital? It's like almost never. It's not like somebody just gave birth and has this great celebration. It's, you go to the Children's Hospital when it's bad. And we went room after room after room, and we finally found her. And she was 10. She also had a brain tumor, and it was just this perfect thing because it showed us that she was having this big celebration. It was her last chemotherapy, and she was, you know, going to be done, and she'd survived this horrific thing, and we were able to place that balloon with her. But it was the people that we met that didn't really meet the criteria for that pink balloon. And one of them was a little boy that, you know, would never walk again. You know, he'd always be in a wheelchair. He would never, you know, be able to run and do all these fun things. And another one was one that wouldn't survive. Like, he actually died. He was buried in Karl Malone's Jersey at 12 years old from cancer. And that was rough to see those things. But the one that really touched our heart was the 7-year-old boy that was from out of state, and his parents could only be there for a one long weekend in the middle. He had to be there 21 days every month. Mm. And I just couldn't imagine leaving my 7-year-old at the hospital, let alone flying him there by himself. And it just opened our hearts, and this service opportunity to, every time we went to the hospital, we bought a balloon and tied it to a Beanie Baby and went and found the person, but it had us visiting these kids and spending time with the kids, and it changed everything. It was a kind of service, which I'm a huge person about service, but it was a kind of service that really, it was different than anything I ever would have said was a service, is to go visit these kids and give them a balloon. We didn't have the money for the balloon or the Beanie Baby. We just did it. Mm-hmm. And it changed everything. And I talk about this a lot. It's one of my signature stories that I share, because that Mylar balloon, like, what is that for you? What could you do different to make a difference in other people's lives? Because that single Mylar balloon, every single time I went to the hospital, I mean, we had to order in special balloons because we wouldn't use the same one twice. And we had to get really creative in visiting to find someone that fit these balloons. But it was the most valuable lesson that we could ever have that year, because it took our focus off of ourselves and allowed us to look at others and see what we could do to make their life better. And it really just shifted everything. Since then, we went through a ton more things. And that was one of our challenges and one of our hardships. I mean, that $80,000, we ended up moving into a trailer and building a house on the property that we had. And it just changed everything. But it was the lessons that we learned. And one of the keynotes that I speak on all the time is discover the gifts in your garbage. When you can look at your challenges, your trials, and those hard things, and you can find what you're learning, when you can look at it and go, oh, wow, I'm getting better in this and this and this, whether it's patience or perseverance, like what are you learning, and start valuing that gift and building on it, you will get through the challenge a ton faster. Mm-hmm. And so like Lisa said, when I first started this, I had just ended in 2012 when I decided I was a speaker. I got invited to a conference in Arizona. I knew the person putting on the conference. I knew 3 of the speakers that would be there. One of my sons lived in Arizona, and it happened to start the day after his birthday. So I said, fine, I'm going to fly in, wish him a happy birthday, be there for his birthday, and go to this conference. And because I knew the person putting on the conference was take your business over 6 figures. And so at this point, we had real estate investing that we had done. We had our own mobile mechanic business that was doing 6 figures. It was doing a great business and things were really good. But we had just lost almost $500,000 on, we pulled everything out of real estate right before the drop in 08. And we were business investors and backed a multi-level company, and it went under. And so here I was going, well, I really don't know what I'm going to do. We had just completed, the 9-year-old had now was 26. He had just completed another year of cancer and brain tumors, and it was just horrific. He had broken his back on Labor Day. Then at Thanksgiving, he was still having headaches so bad and stuff that he couldn't even sit up straight when we were at Moab, and I had to bring him home and take him to the hospital. And we did find that he had another brain tumor. He did brain surgery in December. 8 weeks later, went back to work on light duty, and then found he had another brain tumor. 3 days in, he collapsed at work and hauled him back in. The brain tumor had grown back. We did surgery again in February. And then 8 weeks later, he went back to work, and he was at work about 10 days and called me and said, I'm starting to lose my sight again. And sure enough, it had grown back a 3rd time. Yeah. So in 7 months, he'd had a broken back, 3 brain tumor surgeries, radiation, and was now starting chemotherapy. So fast forward another 6 months of treatment. I go to this conference in September going, my business just went belly up. But my son has now moved back into his own home. My nephew that I had taken in, troubled teen, was now not living with me. My youngest daughter had just moved to college, and I was this empty nester with no business other than we still had our corporation and our rental properties and stuff. But as far as me working during the day, I just really didn't have a lot going on. So I called the person putting on the event, and I'm like, so we already have a 6-figure business. Is it worth it for me to go to this? And she said, I really think it will be good for you. And I got down there, and I was being really kind of arrogant. The first thing you say to people when you go to a business conference is, hey, what do you do? Mm-hmm. And when that was the case, I was like, nothing. I got nothing. And I was like, I already had a 6-figure business, so it really wasn't, I was being a little bit, I guess, stubborn, because I didn't want to be taken as like, oh, well, jump into my multi-level or do this with me, or, I just didn't want that. And by lunch, I was sharing the story of what we had gone through in that year with my son's cancer and my daughter's difficulties and this nephew I had taken in and all that had gone on. And they were like, why aren't you a speaker? And I was like, I'm a back row girl. Like, I don't want to speak. By the end of lunch, I said I was a public speaker and I ran with it. And I haven't looked back. Now, public speaking is not easy. Ask Lisa about that, right? That is not an easy occupation. And most people run from being a speaker. But when I started out, I wanted to empower women. I wanted people to know that you can go through really hard things and make a difference in people's lives. I already had people coming to me, asking me like, how are you doing this? Like, how do you have a smile on your face? How are you still a contribution to society during all these challenges and all these things? And so if someone were to ask me, I know, Lisa, you've asked this, like, what advice would you give someone that's looking at a business or looking to go in or that has started this? I would say, trust yourself. Trust yourself, because you doubt yourself so much. And part of that is confidence in knowing that you can, but until you trust yourself and you push past that fear and you do it, you don't know what that feeling is going to feel like until you do it. And the longer you resist doing it, the more fear builds around it. And it slows you down and stops your progression and your process. So I speak on mostly leadership and communication, but I also do a lot of fear, pushing past the fear. In fact, if you hear me do a full keynote, you'll hear me open with my balloon story and you'll hear me close with jumping out of an airplane. And we went skydiving a year and a half ago. And the entire reason for skydiving started out as a joke for a birthday present when I wanted a rain check, because we were kicking out. My husband had written a book. His book launch was the day after my birthday. Both our birthdays and our anniversary are in 1 week. And there just wasn't time for my birthday then. So I asked for this rain check, and apparently he thought a rain check meant 2 weeks later, he called me and said, I think I'm going to take you skydiving for your rain check. I'm like, no, rain check means I get to choose and I get to have whatever I want when I want it. And rain, I did not want my rain check to turn into skydiving. But it was the greatest thing I ever did. It was when I felt like I was in fear that I decided I would go push past that fear. Because I'd walked on fire. I'd done the whole gamut, I had done zip lining. I had done parasailing. I mean, I'd done all these things that were pushing past fear. And we're an outdoors family. So I did lots. We did rock crawling. We did, ATVs and boats. But when I felt like I was in resistance to jumping out of a plane rather than, like, why don't I want to? I mean, my first thing was, why would I jump out of a perfectly good working plane? Like, I'm not retarded. And yesterday you had a speaker on, I forget his name right this second, but he has jumped out like 4,000 times or something. Jim, there we go. Yeah, Jim, when he said that, I was like, I've been once, Jim, that's awesome. Because I'll ask, how many of you have skydived? And I get about 1% to 2% in the audience. So if I'm in front of 500 people, that you get a few hands. But if you're in front of 100 people, you get maybe 2 or 3. And so it's a great way to end, because really we have to push past that fear. We will never accomplish our goals or the things that we want to, the dreams, the aspirations, those things that are big and monumental in our life, until we push past that fear, until we even acknowledge that it is fear. And that is something that I go deep in with, because fear can show up as shyness. Fear can show up as lack of confidence. Fear can show up as uneducated. But we look at it and go, oh, well, I don't know the next steps, so I'm not going to do them. Well, the next steps are hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like once I said I was a speaker, the next step was hard. I had to speak and I had to do it in front of a bunch of people. And it was interesting because the people in that conference, that 3-day conference that I went to, which was phenomenal, I got hired back by 2 of them in the conference. And one of them was like, well, will you be ready to speak in April? And keep in mind, I was already speaking. I was speaking at the hospital for free. I was speaking at adoption for free. I was speaking at suicide prevention because I'd been through my twin brother's suicide. I'd been through cancer with a child. I'd been through adoption of my daughter. I had experienced those things. So I was already speaking for free and I was already doing it a ton. I spoke in my church a lot. So it wasn't that I didn't know how to speak, as I never really wanted to be a speaker. But as I started developing that business and really speaking and doing my own conferences and doing things, it just kept morphing. And the biggest reason I tell you trust yourself is that I got to a point where I was like, oh, I'm not just supposed to be speaking to women. And that's not where I'm supposed to be. And I think Lisa and I even did a mastermind when I was doing this difference. You came out to my house and I'm like, oh, get that whiteboard out. Here we go. Get the big sticky pads. What do you call those? The
Post-it notes. I think it's post-it.
Yeah, the big post-it posters that are about that size.
Love it. Yeah.
That's a whiteboard. But yeah, we mastermind about different things in our business. And it's incredible when you can look at it and go, you know what? I know this is the direction I'm supposed to go. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to do it, and trust yourself in doing that. So long story short, lots of years of business, lots of experience, lots of time in the corporate world. This last year so I told you I wrote a new program because as a speaker, I had probably $150,000 in booked speeches cancel within 12 hours.
Yeah.
It was devastating. And I was also stepping in as president of National Speakers Association for the Mountain West chapter, which is 4 states. So it has been a really tough year to have 200 speakers out of business and to lead, to take the helm when everyone just lost their livelihood and are scrambling. So it's been a really rough year as far as being in that leadership position and having to do that. And it's a 4-year commitment. So I had said yes a long time before COVID hit. And we have, actually December was our first in-person meeting where I was there, and it was our Christmas party. So it wasn't even really like a meeting, right? So it was totally doesn't look anything like what I thought it would. And yet it's given me the opportunity to write this entire program and get ready to roll it out and have everything fall in place, which I could not have even written the program having not gone and trained and done things, nor would I have known what was needed in corporate following COVID. And I say, trust yourself. So I have a file folder, which is called Kris's Brilliance. Now I know that sounds a little arrogant, but when you have those, sometimes they're at 3 o'clock in the morning moment, you get this download of ideas or things. Sometimes it's a song you hear on the radio and you're just like, oh, that lives for me. So I have learned to write things down because you won't remember it. And I promise you won't remember it. Or the details. And one day on a scratch piece of paper, it's got tears on it and it looks like there's even spilled food on this piece of paper. And when March hit, I was out of state when Utah shut down. I had just flown into Montana and I was doing 3 events. So I was doing an event that night. Then I had a full day training that I was being paid, $5,000 for each one of the trainings. I was doing 2 of them that day. And I When I go in to speak, I look for other things. So I had a paid thing the night before and a paid thing on Saturday before I flew back home. And so it was a very productive little 3 days for me in my business. But I land, and the only thing on Kalispell's news and TV in that little tiny airport was Utah shutting down. And I had just left an hour and a half before that. And by the time I got up to do an all-day training, so 4 hour in one piece of content, a new audience, 4 hours in another piece, was like that 12 hours was email after email after email of cancellations. And by the time I got up in front of them, they did not even have one COVID case in Montana. And I'm up there. I had to just suck it up and be 100% there, knowing that I did not have anything else on the books that was actually going to go for months. And as the year went, it just kept going, pushing farther out. I'm still booked for stuff this year that I was supposed to do last year that has pushed out an entire year. Hopefully some of those go, but for the most part, I had finally built my best year yet, and that was 2020 in speaking, and it was just devastating. But I opened that Kris's Brilliance, and there was the PIER process on that little scratch notepad, that scratch piece of paper with food on it. I have kept it, and at one point we'll frame it. And it was just this whole thing that I've always taught productivity and in being intentional and effective, how to be more effective in your business. And those were some of the pain points that that you're going to get when you bring me into Keynote for your corporation. Those are the things I'm going to help you do better at. And yet here I was going, okay, life is like crazy. What am I going to do? And yet I'd already put that in the file. So trust yourself always, and be willing to be scared. Like, be willing to be scared. If not you, then who? Because being a business owner is not about sitting in a cushy seat and sitting back with your feet up on the desk. There are times you're going to have your feet kicked up on the desk, and it's very few times, if you want my opinion. If you're doing that every day, you are not taking the right steps to move forward. Because it's not about being on pause or resting in your office. It's about having a life outside of the office. So if you aren't busy enough to be there for the right reasons, you need to step out and go have your life with your kids and your spouse and your friends, right? And have those relationships, because there's not going to be that many moments when you have time to just kick back, fold your arms, and put your feet up on the desk if you're really taking your business serious. A couple of things that I want to share with you, just because it's interesting that Lisa asked me to speak on this. I was on the I say recording, but I was live yesterday for most of the people speaking, and I was like, okay, so SEO, I hire out. All these things they were talking about, I'm like, yep, I pay for that. I pay for that. Those aren't my expertise. But in looking at like, what could I share to really benefit your business? Because you're on this to learn business skills. You're on this to learn, what are my next steps? How could I do things differently? We're learned about taxes today, accounting. And after I did get off, I heard that, just because I said that, Infusionsoft. You guys heard about Infusions? Well,
yeah, Darren came.
Darren Adams.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Because he had sent me a message and he said, hey, I think we're on the same conference, and you've used Infusionsoft for what, like 8 years? So why don't you tell me some stories? And I said, dude, I think we're on the different conferences, because usually they're on a stage of thousands. And I just laughed and said, Darren, I think we're on different stages. And, you know, I could give you some stories, but I don't think it's going to matter, because I don't think you're speaking after me. And he sent back and said, nope, it's with Lisa Myers. I'm like, oh, okay. So then I gave him these stories, but by the time he saw them, he'd already spoken. So I'm not sure what he told you about me. But I'm a big cheerleader for Darren because I've had Infusionsoft since very early in my business. In 2013, you wouldn't think I needed Infusionsoft for what I was doing, but I had started putting out a TV show. In fact, Lisa had a TV spot too, as well, with the Nashes. And mine was one of their best on their program, on their being with them as a syndicate. And I was getting 6,000 or more downloads a month of my episodes that we were putting out on this 30 minutes TV spot. And there was no way to monetize on that because there was no way to get their information. They could download and watch it and it didn't matter. It was gone. And we had to try to find a way to do this. So I bought in early to Infusionsoft, and I know he gave you a ridiculous deal yesterday, but it was $2,000 to buy Infusionsoft and then pay a monthly fee.
Yeah.
So he gave you a great deal. I love my Infusionsoft. I have online programs on my back end. All I have to do is put the person into it and push a date. Well, I send an email to my virtual assistant. That's the second thing I probably would tell you to do is hire sooner than you think. Hire help. What is not your expertise, you should not be trying to do. I'll repeat that. What is not your expertise, you should not be trying to do. You do not go to Walmart and have the C-suite team in the customer service box. You just don't. You don't have them stocking shelves. You don't have them creating clip art. It's just not it's not their thing. They have to have the vision of where they're headed. They have to have that. Same thing in a mom and pop restaurant. You might have mom in the back cooking. You might have dad at the cash register, but they're going to have waitresses. They're going to have hostesses. And eventually they're not going to be there at all. It's their kids are there, right? Mm-hmm. So do what you are good at and be willing to add those other people. Now, it was mentioned yesterday about virtual assistants. I hired a virtual assistant in 2013. I still have her today. And there are weeks that I can't afford her because I have her doing so much for me. And I'm just like, oh, I got to pay you. And there's times when I'm just like, you know what? We don't have a lot going on. It's the best thing I've ever done. And I had to find someone that specialized in Infusionsoft, which meant they were more expensive. But I got her because she specialized in their program. So I can send her an idea and be like, okay, so this is the program I want to run, or this is the campaign that we want to do. And she goes in and sets it up, and it's like, oh, if they open the email, then they get this one. If they don't open it, they get this one. If they don't open that one, they get this one. And she builds it all out. I have a hard time keeping a new password every 90 days because you can't repeat ever. And I can't come up with that many things over the years to even get in and see it. But I can get in and see who's opened it. It gives me tasks. So when it sends me tasks, it sends me an email and says, call this person, you have to schedule this appointment, or this person to schedule on your calendar. Like, I get tasks, right? So the more you can automate your business, the more you can get it going, the better you'll do. The more systems you put in place, that was mentioned yesterday as well. The systems are a big deal. In fact, Boyd Peterson spoke yesterday, and when he owned the South Valley Journal, when he was still doing that, they actually in 2012 highlighted my son, might have been 2013 when he actually did it, because he had it from 2012 through 2013. No, 2011 through 2012. So it was probably 2012 when he actually showcased his story. And they did that because at that point, he was no longer paid from his job. He was just on a leave. He couldn't, like, he owned a home, but we were having to pay for his house because he was living with me because he wouldn't survive. And like, there was just a lot going on. We were selling everything to keep him alive. And he had a friend that was Boyd's son, not a close friend, but he just knew that he was, you know, from his graduating class, and they were 25. So they, you know, he hadn't talked to him since high school, but they ran his story the second time when he had when the brain tumor came back 3 times. And I didn't really get to know him until later in some networking. And it was like, I was actually speaking and he was in the audience, and I had to tell people, okay, so the story that you're hearing about, and you're hearing this, when we went to the doctor, and, he comes in and he's like, tears are running down this doctor's face. And he's like, it's back for the 3rd time in 5 months. And Boyd was like, I ran that story in my paper, and he did. And it got us, there was some fundraisers that were done. There was some things that became big because they had put it out there. It's the networking and the who you know that's going to get you the farthest. Mm-hmm. Networking in the right way gets it started. It's the relationships that you build after that. My relationship with Lisa, I can call her any day of the week, and she could call me, and we could call and say, oh my gosh, this is what's going wrong in my business. Now, everybody needs somebody like that. Yeah. When Lisa went through losing her mother, I honestly meant every word I ever said. You call me. I don't care if it's 2 a.m. You call me. I know you need an out for that. And there were a lot of times that she would call and be driving, and she didn't even know what she needed, but she needed someone. And you need to find those people, build those relationships, because over time, Lisa and I would do stuff back and forth. And if I had some great thing happening for me, I'd be like, hey, Lisa, let's do this. Or we'll, go to lunch and talk about where things are at. You need those relationships. You also need an accountability partner. You need to find somebody that will hold you to the fire. And this is not, Lisa and I have never been accountability partners on a deep level because we're too nice. I know I could call on her to be an accountability partner, but I want someone who will kick your butt. Mm-hmm. They're going to love you all the same, but they're going to say it like it is. Now, when we did our mastermind together, and I'm like, why in the crap would you do that? What if you did this, this, this? And she'd be like, oh my gosh, I never even thought of that. You need those people. Yeah. Like, we've had some great times that we could dial in on, what could I do different? What am I doing wrong? Where could I make some adjustments? And those are phenomenal. But find the right accountability partner that will hold you to the fire and make you hit goals. I had an accountability partner that I met, and she's a speaker, and we just hit it off. We did 50 goals in 60 days. And I'm like, one of those goals was to write the book and get it to the editor. It wasn't like little goals. There were some little ones in there, but there was some major ones in there too. And then we celebrate. You get to celebrate big. When we made our 60 goals in 60 days, we celebrated at Disney World. Wow. We were headed to Disney World for a speaker conference anyway, but we went 3 or 4 days early and played. We also celebrated, we did 60 days, and we had done a bunch of goals right back from when we met each other. That first 60 days, we went to a rock concert. We did a hotel room overnight, went to a spa, the whole bit. We celebrated big, and it wasn't to try to spend a ton of money. It was to celebrate big enough for the big goals we were hitting. Yeah. When you put it on the line and you have somebody holding you to the fire, you will accomplish incredible things. There's so much value in someone that will, say it like it is and is not worried to offend you or to upset you. You need those kind of people that will, can say it. If you don't have a business coach, you need a business coach. Business coaches are phenomenal. They're down the road farther than you, and even more than a mentor. Maybe you start with a mentor, but a business coach or a coach that can take you to the next level, they can take you faster. They can give you things to do that will make you absolutely, just expand beyond what you think your level is.
Yeah.
I have a business coach right now that he just pushes my buttons. And he'll be like, okay, I'm not taking that crap. Like, I really don't care that it's COVID and all this stuff. Why don't you have this certification written? You know, like he is on it. And he's the perfect coach for me. And you need different ones. You don't need the same person. There's a lot of different people that you need. I want you to go to krisbarney.com. That's my website. And I want you to go to the blog. There's a few things that with a new year and new things going on, the best thing that you could do is set your declarations. So resolutions are what everybody wants to do, and that's to resolve the issue. So they want to resolve being overweight, or resolve no time management, or resolve, okay, you can resolve it, but then it's just going to come back. And then next year, you're going to have the same resolutions. You're going to be like, organize my house. Well, I'm sorry, how long does it stay organized? You've got to change the behaviors. Affirmations affirm. So affirmations are good, but they only affirm what you're doing. So as long as it's going good, that affirmation, that affirming that it's good, stays with you. But the second it turns the course, okay? So for me, I did affirmations of, you know, I am losing weight, feeling great, blah, 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 blah. And when I wasn't losing weight, I wasn't feeling great, the affirmation did not work. Does that make sense? Because it was affirming the positive. And when the negative was showing up, it finally won. And it didn't matter if that was 3 weeks in or 2 days in. You can only affirm while it's in the positive. And affirmations can work, but you have to continuously work at them. So I tell everybody to create declarations. Declarations declare what you are going to do. They declare how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, and there's a whole thing built around it. So I love acronyms. If you go to my website and go to the blog, the last 3 blogs would be huge for any business owner. Set up your declarations, set them up for this coming year. It tells you what words to use, how to write them. It also goes through a whole acronym on declarations of the things that around declarations, which I'm just going to rattle them off really quick for you. It's decision, to make the decision. Evaluate where you're at, why you want to do this, how you can do it. Be consistent is your C. Loyal, be loyal to your beliefs, loyal to your values, loyal to you. Be accountable. Repetition, you want to be repeating your declarations 3 times or more. Attainable goals. Yes, you can say, I want my business to do $1 million, but that needs to be like, where are you at now and what is that? If you're at 30,000 this year, you are not going to make $1 million next year. Not going to happen. And if it does, it will be a freak thing that you can't repeat. But if you're at 250,000 and your goal is $1 million, you'll probably make it to 6 or 7. But be realistic, so it's an attainable goal. Transformational. If your goals are not making it transformational for you, you are not thinking big enough. Because when it hurts, when it's tough, is when you'll have the most growth. It's when you're going to find that big client. When I took the stage the first time, I was being paid. So the people in the audience that hired me wanted me in April. Well, their November speaker canceled. And in 3 weeks, I had to have a website. I was speaking in front of women business owners. And it was a regional NABO event, National Association of Women Business Owners. It was regional in Arizona. So we drove down, and while we're driving, I'm going, did you get a video on my website? Did you push the website live? I was doing all these things on the way down there to look like I was a speaker and had some clout in front of these business owners, right? But I made it happen. I got paid to be there. The first time I spoke, I was paid. I had people stay after for an all-day conference after. We did a training. And there was like 3 signed up and 28 stayed. They were like, she was that good in an hour, I'm staying for the rest of the 4 hours,
Yeah.
right? So push yourself, have it be transformational, internalize. So visualize it to where you feel it happening. Okay, I already know what companies I want on my beta program. And one of those companies that I haven't even approached yet, I have visualized it to the point of that's who I wrote the program for, was that company. And it's a $175,000 ticket just for me to come in and get started with the employees at that location. So internalize it to the point that you see it happening. Open the space and do what it takes for O. And N is nurturing. You've got to be nurturing. You've got to nurture yourself through this process. It can be tough. And you're going to have peaks and valleys. And you're going to need somebody like I have Lisa that we can go to lunch and we can complain, we can have tears, and we can celebrate. You need those people that get it, that are also an entrepreneur and are also there to just say, it's okay. And the last S on declarations is start. You will not accomplish anything if you don't start. Okay, when I started writing the program that I'm doing, it was kind of like, really, am I at this level? Can I really do this? Like, I don't know about this, but, I just had to start, because pretty soon I had 71 pages of content in a Word doc that has to go into 100 and something pages in workbooks in the 4 different sections. And I just had to start. And I did the same thing when I spoke to women. So I spoke at a lot of NAVOs. I spoke at a lot of women's groups. There were a lot of things that they wanted women speakers to come for free. And I had to decide, okay, so how do I monetize this? How do I go to the next level, right? And you have to find a way to do that. There's a couple others. So if you go to the blog, you will see my whole blog. And they talked about blogs of like 1,200 words. Most of my blogs are over 1,200. You're going to see the declarations one. You're going to see Be Resilient, which is another acronym, Be Resilient. And that one is really good as well. Not that I'm trying to boast, but it's free content.
Yeah.
Go get it. And the one that came out today is Positive Routines. Positive routines will change your life. I do a boot up, or some call it a morning ritual. Some call it whatever they want. I do boot up and shut down, just like a computer. When you don't shut down your computer, or you don't close all the windows and all the things, right? Your computer will freeze. It doesn't function. It doesn't work as good as it will. When you boot up and you close down properly, it works like a charm every time. And it's more efficient and more effective. So I do the morning ritual. I have exercise, positive reading, prayer, meditation, me time. And I think it was Jim. No, it wasn't Jim. Somebody talked about it, and he does 2 hours without any interruptions.
Mitch, I think.
Mitch. It was Mitch. And there are times that, mine's 2 hours without interruptions, but there's also a lot of times that I have things going on, and I'm getting the glare from my windshield, and
I don't see it.
coming through the blind, even though the blind is closed. Anyway, so you can it's not getting better. You can go onto my blog and you can see, this was episode 280, I think, yesterday. So my YouTube channel has the videos, but on the blog, you get the video and the article that we've written. And it gives you both. If you can put positive routines in your life, in your schedule, and declarations that you're doing consistently, I promise you will be successful, because it will get you in a program and a process for yourself to be productive and to look at the next level and start to envision what you want to have happening, where you want to be, and scheduling. The only thing that I would add to that is time management. Time management is huge. And somebody else talked about it was Mitch that puts, what did he call it?
24/7. I love that part.
Yeah, but he like blocked it out as
Pods. I think
pods. There you go.
Yeah.
He like used a different word. I block it out in time blocks, and I block it, and if I don't reschedule it, I don't get out of doing it. Like, I put it to the point that it's that important if it hits my schedule. And when I teach time management, I always tell people, you put on that schedule what you want to do first, and then what you get to do second. Is that one getting it? It's coming right off the windshield onto my face.
So what do you do when, like on these time blocks and so forth, with coaching and that? Do you have like certain times that like appointments are during this time block,
So for the most part, Mondays aren't a big speaking day. Most corporate, most people that fly you in, when you get booked on a Monday, it's because they had a day picked and your schedule was full, but they still want you. So you end up doing a Monday. But my Monday starts with an email to my assistant that has our article, the video, the link, everything, the pictures, and it goes to my social media person as well as my VA. And it's everything that has to happen that week. And I have blocked from like 8 to 10 to get that out to them. Then I have coaching. Most of Mondays are coaching for me. And writing just depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes it'll be a filming Monday if I don't have as many clients on that day, because I have a couple different days that I do coaching clients. But then I also put in there, if I don't have exercise written down, it doesn't happen. Because what you do not schedule, you will not do. So if you don't schedule your nail appointment, so I am a big nail person. That was my appointment this morning that I had to be to before I spoke. And I had to call and be like, can we do it a little bit earlier? If it's not on my schedule, it won't happen, because someday will never come. Someday is always down the road. And if you don't have it scheduled, it just doesn't happen. And that is a family vacation. That is self-care time. That is date night. Like, it's on my schedule and it's blocked. We do not have clients Friday night, no matter what. And I think I can count 3 times ever that we've had clients then. And it's when I'm at a speaking deal over the weekend, or I'm there and my husband's not, and he'll have a client that's on Zoom, and I might have clients on Zoom when I'm sitting in a hotel. But you have to be willing to like reschedule it rather than just be like, I didn't do it. Because every time you do that, you lose trust for yourself. You are out of integrity with yourself. So you're telling yourself, what I say I'm going to do, I'm not going to do. So don't trust me. And the more you say, don't trust me, and I'm just kidding, and I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to hit that snooze button again, every time that you say, no, not going to do it, and you skip it without rescheduling it and without showing you that it's a priority, you just told yourself that you can't be trusted. That's when you're on a diet and you cheat. Nobody else saw you, but you now know you can't be trusted. You have lowered your integrity. So the free gift that you get, I put the link in here. It will come out with Lisa's stuff. The free gift is the 7 traits that I teach. It will tell you the story of the balloon story and stuff, but it's a video series that you'll get over 2 weeks. And it actually does enroll you into our All Things Possible community. And once a week, we send an email that tells the article, gives you the video link that comes out that week. And then it tells you where we're at, what's going on our schedule. And you could call it a newsletter. It's our possibilities, your possibilities in being in our community. You can unsubscribe at any point, but it will give you those 7 videos for free. And also tell you the trait, and I tell you about that trait, and then I tell you the stories behind it for the next couple of chapters of how I learned that trait, why I see it differently, how it will affect your life and how it will change your life. So feel free to get that. The video series is the free gift that you can have anytime. But thanks for being here. I hope that you gained some nuggets on how to be successful in your business and how to take it forward. I knew that going into this with a lot of the experts you had on here, Lisa, that there were going to be a lot of people that are going to give you a lot of advice in specific niches. And what I didn't see was a lot of how can you as a person have improvement right now that will take you forward. And if you'll look at those blogs that those last 3, especially blogs, those right now will help you be more productive, more effective, and more resilient for sure. But also to implement the 7 traits that I teach. I teach these to corporate all the time. I mean, it's on excellence and confidence and lasting love. Like if we ever needed to love each other, it's now. Like there's a lot in there that, you know, sounds like simple, easy things, but when you take it to a new level, it changes everything. So thanks for letting me be on here.
Thank you, Kris. So good. So good. And thank you for just the generosity and for saying yes. And I just appreciate it. And just also, yeah, attending such great content. And I just really appreciate you. And I understand. So I seen Kris had a blog or a picture. She's getting ready to make a transition into her life. And moving.
Yeah, when
so
I
I can't wait
yourself.
to trust yourself.
Yeah, there's a huge, like in a matter of days, we chose to sell our house and put our house up for sale. We purchased property, and I'm going through a whole couple-year transition because when we do build, it will be by my kids and grandkids, which I love, but it will put me 2 hours from an airport. So it's just kind of bad for a speaker. So I'm doing tons of virtual. I have the 3-camera shoot. I have the whole works and the whole thing. And it's just really exciting. But at the same time, it's like, what am I doing?
So thank you.